watching HALENVILLE Live with Fruitcake Tony. Woo! Wow!
All right, and we are live. Yes, we are. HALENVILLE Live on Tuesday night. It is July the 2nd, 2024. Fruitcake Tony in the house. Flying solo tonight. Ed couldn't be with us. A little under the morning or the afternoon, the weather. So wishing Ed good health and good vibes. Ed, hope things are good with you, bro. It's an exciting day. Yesterday, July the 1st, Tonechaser came out on audiobook. And we have both Steve and Adam in the house tonight to talk about it. And Adam was instrumental in the process of this audiobook and needs big kudos tonight. Yes, he does. And we'll certainly talk all about it. He will. Let me see where we are here. So before I bring these guys in, I hope your week's going well. We talk Van Halen and Mammoth WVH here every Tuesday night. So subscribe here if you're not already. If you love Van Halen, thanks for being here. All right. So at some point in the evening, the later part of the evening, we'll venture down into some popular, nearly impossible Van Halen trivia. We'll fish you out a 71D quarter. We'll give you a big $1 million Van Halen note. Very lovely. You know what I'm talking about. Nearly impossible tonight. Very close to impossible. So just saying, putting that out there. Let me open up the chat and see who is hanging out with us first before I bring these guys in. All right, let me see here. If you are just joining, say hello in the chat, please. The Dreamer's Life. What's up, Will? Good to see you, man. Polly Walnuts in the house. What's up, Polly? Good to see you, man. Hope your summer's going good, dude. What's up, man? Good to you. Nelson Rodriguez is here also. Soba, hope things are cool with you, bro. Good to see you. My mouse is under layer. What the hell? Keith Campbell in the house. What's up, Keith? Good to see you, sir. Mikey Mojo. What's up, Mikey? Good to see you, man. Always good to see you, dude. All right, let me scroll here. Kurt 5150 in the house. What's up, Kurt? Good to see you, dude. Hit him straight, man. Get some roll. It's summertime. Yeah, it is. Always good to see Kurt, part of the Under the Bus. Don't get thrown under the bus. Under the Bus crew on Wednesday, YouTube. That's what we watch over there. OU812 Ryan, what's up, man? Good to see you. Speaking of YouTube, Thursday and Sunday for Ryan, and that's a good guitar tone that you wanna check out. So go check out Ryan Thursday 5 p.m. on Sunday. Yes, Ryan, good to see you, sir. All right, so all right, I think that's everyone for now. If you are just joining, say hello. I'm gonna say take a sip of tea. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Roach and Steve Rosen. What's up, fellas? Good to see you.
Hey, guys.
Adam, Steve, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Good
Adam,
to see you guys.
Hey, Steve.
my man.
So rocking the glasses tonight.
Yeah. I thought you looked so different. Is it cold where you are?
Oh, it's freezing. It's like
Is it really?
0 degrees. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's your winter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of our coldest days, I think.
Wow.
High of 100 here tomorrow, Adam.
Yeah. That's all right. I'll be in Thailand next week, so I can't complain.
Ah.
Right on. Always good to see you. Steve, welcome. Always great to see you, sir. Welcome home. Tonechaser book, after its big third edition, you kind of thought audio book was inevitable. Adam was instrumental in making this happen. But Adam, you had helped Steve with his audio stuff and YouTube before. So
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while now since we first started with our little YouTube clips, with with our Derek, playing the Van Halen stuff, and going back to some of the earlier editing as well. So it's all come into place, and it's out now.
Yeah. So you guys take us through real quick when did you say, Steve, yes, this is going to audiobook, and when did this project start?
Adam, why don't you answer that question? Because I can never remember. Yep. I mean, so when did I start talking to you about this? I mean,
I think it probably would have been maybe about 1 year ago we first mentioned it, and then saying, hey, it'd be good one day, because we're doing those editing. And I remember you said, this might be a good idea for audiobook. And then maybe around about August 2023, that's when we first really started getting into it. You started doing your recordings. And then after that, probably 6 months of this year, all the editing, putting it all together. So I'd say close to 10 months to a year it's been in the makings.
Yeah. So what do you remember actually the first stuff you ever did for me? I mean, what was it, the stuff with Derek Fuller? Was that the first stuff you ever put up on YouTube for me?
Yeah, I think that was one of the first ones. There might have been another one where we did the read-throughs. Remember, we did the read-throughs for the book as well. And that was similar to what we're talking about for the audiobook, where that was just you talking, going through some of the chapters. Not the whole chapter, just like bits of. And I think that's where it first started. That was, you have to have a look when that was now. That was probably about a year ago, I'd say. But anyone in chat, have a look at Steve's YouTube channel and see when our first video was, the read-through.
That's right. You know, I never really thought about that. So maybe, Sandra, how are you? So yeah, so maybe that's really where the seed was first planted, doing those read-throughs, even though it wasn't like, oh, I'm doing a read-through because later I'm going to do an audiobook. It wasn't that conscious. But, you know, doing the read-throughs and the response was pretty amazing, actually, to those interviews, you know, those videos we put together. So maybe that's where that seed was planted.
Yep, exactly. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. So
I can tell you exactly when the first read-through was.
Okay.
So that was exactly 1 year ago. Look at that. So it was, to be exact, 22nd of June it was, our first read-through, I think it was. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry, I'm wrong. Totally wrong. The first one was in 15th of March, 2023. It was our first read-through.
March 2023.
Yep. There you go. That was our first video that we did.
March 22, 23.
Hey, Ronald.
Yep. So it's been a while.
Right. So it was, and we didn't really start this. We started this somewhere around
September.
September. So it wasn't that long. So it was March, April, May, June, July, August. So it's about 6 months later, after that first read-through, that we decided to do the audiobook. So that probably was the trigger, you know, those read-throughs. Yeah. You know, and along the way, people would reach out, hey, you know, is there going to be an audiobook? And, you know, prior to March where I did read-throughs, I mean, honestly, I never thought about it at all. You know, so I think I would just say, no plans, you know. And then maybe I think what happened once we kind of got the ball rolling, you know, I think I would probably say something like, well, you know, no, not at the moment, you know, trying to be a little secretive, right, you know, and not give our hand away. But to get to that point when we decided to do it, man, that was really, for me, it was not an easy decision. And we talked about this. So the reason that I recorded these interviews, not just with Edward, but with, you know, whoever I was interviewing, the reason the interviews were being recorded was so that I could go back and listen to them, transcribe them, and write a story. You know, they were never, ever meant to be heard by anybody else. I always had sort of an archivist's mind. So I saved all those interviews, you know, you know, I had the cassettes and I tried to label them and I put them aside. That was just me. I mean, I know a lot of writers who did a lot of interviews and they never saved their tapes. They either threw them away or they didn't take care of them or they recorded over them, which I stupidly did on some very early interviews I did. And that makes me crazy, but luckily it only happened a couple of times. You know, I recorded over a Joe Cocker interview and oh my God. But, but sort of the collector, the documentarian in me, I was saving all those interviews. So, you know, when the time came to thinking about an audiobook, it was like, well, I never wanted anybody else to hear those interviews. You know, that was me. That was my world. You know, it's like, hey, it's my football. You know, you can't play. It's, you know, you can't play in my game. This is all me. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe there is some real historic value here. You know, people have read the book and the response has been pretty amazing. And maybe people would want to hear Edward's voice, hear those actual interviews that I have just tried to describe in words in the book, you know? And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought there's some value there. I thought people would really be intrigued by that. And then ultimately, you know, it just came to a point where it was like, yeah, let's do this. And then just the process of getting all of those interviews to you. I am the worst technically oriented person who's ever lived. And you know that, man. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to post on Instagram. I have somebody helping me. You put all my stuff on YouTube. I don't have a clue how to put anything up there. So I thought, my God, how do I even get the audio to the guy? And thank goodness I had WeTransfer. And somehow I knew how to, you know, at least get a freaking interview onto, you know, WeTransfer and send you one interview at a time. I have a really slow computer, man. And so literally, and I've seen it happen, and people say, well, it's impossible. I would put one of those interviews up on YouTube, on WeTransfer, you know, and the little thing goes around, you know, and it's like 1%, 2%, 24%. And then it would be 23%, 22%. And I would tell people, they go, that's impossible. I go, it's not impossible. I've seen it. So what would take somebody else 6 minutes would literally take me 9 hours. It would get up to 50%, then it go back to 30%. It would get to 80%, then go back to 60%. In fact, just today, and I'm not going to give away who it was, so people are going to love this, but I sent you one. It took me, I put it up yesterday afternoon, and it just got to you. I don't know if you've seen it, Adam.
Yeah,
but
I just got it now.
I mean, at a point in time, I was just going to say, fuck it. This thing is never going to get there. So it was going through that, through all of these hours and hours of interviews that you finally got. Then, you know, you'd be putting them up, and you'd be editing them, and you'd have to maybe insert, because in the book, I would actually describe maybe some action that was taking place within the interview. And so then we'd have to like insert that little bit. And then I think we just decided not to put that in because it just sounded too weird putting it in, and trying to cut in and out was just kind of crazy. So you have the interviews, and then you'd say, oh yeah, man, I'm on chapter 18, but it's missing the last 2 pages of interviews from the book. And I go, oh my God. And I blame it on you, Adam. I go, Adam, you lost them. They got to be there somewhere. Look on some other cassette that's not labeled chapter 26. It's your fault. Go find them, you know. And I think once you found some little bits on a different.
Hey, Monique.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. And your fault, Tony.
Yeah.
But then I'd have to go back, and I realized, oh my God, these 2 pages exist on a different interview, a different recording somewhere. And as I was writing the book, I found them, but I never labeled them. I never labeled, you know, like end of interview 1985 or whatever that was, you know. So now I had to go back, and I had to listen through stuff. And sure enough, man, there'd be like a little piece on something that wasn't labeled, but we found every missing piece. Because I thought the worst thing that could have been possible that I didn't want to do was me having to narrate a part of a missing audio bit, you know. Having to narrate Edward's response. I thought, oh my God, that's just so cheesy, you know. But we ultimately found all of those parts, man.
Yep.
And you sat there, and I'm sure you spent a freaking long time, you know, equalizing and normalizing and dehissing and trying to take out 45-year-old moans and groans of a cassette player dying, and, you know, the sounds of the cassette being recorded on the actual interview that I'm doing, and, you know, airplane noises or street sounds, you know. And yeah, it took us, I think the point when I first started a narration And after, I think maybe, I don't even know if you had all of the audio by then, but from start to finish, it was about an 8-month process.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I
Yeah.
honestly believe when I started doing it with Tanner Poppet, so Tanner Poppet was my guy over here. Tanner had a little studio, lived about literally 5 minutes away from me. Tanner recorded all of my narrations. And Tanner would sort of edit as we went along. So I would be reading something and I'd screw up and I'd trip over a word or I couldn't get a sentence right. So I'd read it again. Well, that little bit had to be edited out. Well, Tanner did a lot of that, but then at a point in time, Tanner got too busy with his other work, which I understood. And so now all of that extra work now fell on Adam. So he not only had to edit all of the interview stuff, all of the archival audio, but he now had to edit all of my narration and edit out my mistakes. So I believed, I thought it would take a year. So the fact that it only took 8 months to me is pretty astonishing. Right? You know, Adam is, you know, how many miles away are you, Adam? 6,008. Right? You know,
8
so
months,
what's that?
8 months.
8 months from start to finish, and to me, that's pretty amazing. So there's now over 30 hours of audio. I think it sounds amazing. I think Adam did an incredible job. Adam, why don't you talk about, because I really don't know this. What was your process like getting the audio? And some was a little more challenging than others. So how did you what was your process?
Yeah, so pretty much from the start, the main thing was, like you were saying before, getting rid of all those background noises, the hissing. You know, had to use different programs to try and get all that out. But then at the same time, make sure you can still understand what you guys are talking about, especially Ed, because you know you're close to the mic, but Ed's could be on a telephone call, you know, away from you. So trying to normalize all those volumes to get it together, and then at the same time, like there was other parts as well, not just audio. I remember there was I can't remember what chapter it was, but you were talking in the book about you and guys playing together. And I reached out to you, Steve, and I said, hey, have you got that audio of you and Ed playing? And you said, hey, I have it. So we'd go back and insert that as well. So that was really cool about the audio book, being not just you guys talking, but having the guitar playing. And you know, Ed showing you, or you can hear it anyway, hey, you know, I've got this thing going on, this tapping. And then teaching you how to do it. That's all in the book. So people listen to the audiobook to hear all that as well. So yeah, like you were saying before, the trickiest part was when I'd go through it, you know, I'd go through the book and then I'd get to a page and, oh, hang on, you know, this is not there. Then I'll have to go back through one of the other tapes and then find a little section there, or you would send it to me. And so that's the part that took the longest, I'd say, besides all the normalizing and the hissing.
Yeah.
And then there's other parts where like you would rate as well, that's in the book. And then we'll find some of that audio as well from you and Ed talking. So we'll go back and insert that into it. So, I mean, probably the more audio of you and Ed talking would put into the book, which is, sorry, the audio book, which was great. And then there was other parts where I'd reach out to you and say, hey, you know, this is not in the book. Do you want to put it in? And you say, yeah, put it in there. So the audio book's actually got that extra parts as well.
That's so lovely too, though. That's the lovely touch. A lot of audio books are either A or B, where it's a strange narrator, and when it's a stranger, he might be excellent, but you lose the personal. But when you do it yourself and it's in your own words like that, but when this, and you guys have already been doing this with the read-throughs where there's interview sprinkles amongst you speaking, Steve, and that's what's so cool about this, compared to other audiobooks, and not everybody. I haven't really jumped on, me personally, doing a lot of reading, jumped on the audiobook thing like others. Charles Greene, he's a big fan of audiobooks, and others are as well. But it's classy. It's a classy touch if you can do it yourself. And as big a book as this is, I'm sure that the audio recording all this stuff was painstaking, Steve, to say the least.
Yeah, man, it was rough, you know, and you know, you start out that first day, and I'm trying to read through that first paragraph. You're reading my book, and I'm overjoyed that you are, whatever that is, you know, and I stumble on the fourth line. I'm thinking, my God, this is going to take us 6 years. You know, it's going to, you know, the century's going to end before I can finish this book, you know. I honestly, you know, you start it, you think, my God, how is this ever going to get done? And then I thought, if Adam ever gets through simply editing it, cleaning it, mixing, normalizing, EQing, how is he ever going to put those parts together with my narration? You know, because sometimes it would be just one paragraph, you know, where I might be speaking to Edward or something, and we put that little bit in, but then it would be narration. It wouldn't just be an interview section. You know, I thought, my God, he's going to have to follow. He's going to have to label his parts, you know, but he's amazing at that. You know, I thought, he's the guy. He can do that, you know. But you bring up a couple points, Tony. So, you know, I thought when I decided to do the audiobook, I knew Adam was going to be on board. I found Tanner Poppet, the engineer who recorded my narrations. When I you know, put those wheels in motion, I thought briefly, you know, to find an outside narrator. You know, I thought about that briefly, and you know, I mean, there's hundreds of them out there, you know, and I'm sure they're all amazing, you know, people who do that professionally, and they have these wonderful voices. But as you mentioned, Tony, those people come in, right? They may do 2 audiobooks in a day. I mean, what took me, I mean, and I don't know what it took me. I think I would work with Tanner once or twice a week, working around his schedule. You know, I think it took, even then it took probably 4 or 5 months. You know, somebody could have come in, read the thing top to bottom. I mean, I don't know, maybe they could have done it in 3 days or 4 or 5 days. I mean, you know, they're capable of reading for 5 or 6 hours a day. I couldn't do that. I mean, your voice really does kind of go. But that being said, you know, you brought it up, Tony. Those people are coming in. They don't know my book. You know, they may not even know who Edward Van Halen is. You know, it could have been a book on President Nixon. It could have been a book on the wildlife of Australia. I mean, it's just a project to them. So they come in, they're seeing that text for the first time, and they're reading through it. So yes, technically, they're going to do a good job, and they're not going to stumble over the words. But they're also, you know, they're not emotionally invested in it. You know, they don't know that section about Edward changing his guitar strings was such an amazing moment, and it has to be read to convey that, you know, because nobody ever sees Edward Van Halen changing guitar strings. I saw that, and I want to convey that to people. Well, what is that like, you know? And so as I'm reading, and I remember those moments, without trying to go overboard, without trying to be exaggerated, you know, I wanted to convey those moments through my reading. And that was a hard thing to do, you know, without getting maudlin or overly sad in the sad parts, or without trying to be happy and, you know, real happy with the happy parts, you know. So that was a tough thing to do. So yeah, so that was a challenge. So early on, I decided I was going to read my book. you know. But then I thought, well, I'm going to read the entire book. You know, I'm going to read all those bits where it's Edward's voice. And you know, I looked at it and I thought, well, okay, I mean, I can do it. You know, I can read all those parts, but I thought it's going to be lacking. It's going to be lacking a lot. And then I thought, well, what if I just embed some of the original interviews I did with Edward and just pepper them in amongst the stuff that I would read, you know, where I would read my part and then Edward's part. I thought, well, that would be cool. People could get a little sense of it. But then I thought, that doesn't work. It just didn't strike me. And then I thought, well, what if I use all of the original interviews from Edward? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, my God, there is so much content there. There's so much audio to go through. I know how much there was because I had to listen to it to write the book. And I thought, my God, to edit that stuff, to put it in, I go, it will never end. You know, Adam says, yeah, he would be on board, and he agreed early on, and I thought, this is impossible. This can't be done. But I finally thought that's the only way it could be done, you know. And I think at this point, now that it's done and I've listened to it, I think it's amazing. I don't think there's any other audiobook out there like this. And I just mean Van Halen audiobook. I mean any type of music or any other type of audiobook that that has the actual audio from the subject being written about, you know, whether it's a John Wayne book or you know, some famous athlete, you hear a narrator reading all of those parts. And yes, it's good, but I don't think it's anything like this. And I think for that reason, it's pretty unique, you know. And I think we did an amazing job. And I think a Van Halen fan hearing this stuff, they're just going to be blown away. And Adam brings up that stuff. Yes, there are musical moments in here that are just, I think they're amazing. I mean, they're just incredible. You know, and Adam would talk about some of that stuff, and I had to go find that stuff because initially I didn't want any of that stuff in there. And then I thought, my God, this stuff, people are just going to be blown away by it, you know. So you're going to hear those little bits and pieces. There are parts that are just, they're just unreal to me. Beyond that, and Adam touched on it. So when I did the original interview, my question may have been something like, and I'm just, you know, spitballing here. So Edward, so, you know, you're working on the new record, and I heard that you're, you know, using the Bumblebee guitar on that, you know, but you put on new strings, and oh, so you're smoking a cigarette, and here, let me light that for you. And yeah, man, so how you been? And in other words, I might have rambled. That question could have been, you know, 3 minutes long. For the magazine, the only thing that you're reading is what guitar are you playing on the new record, Edward? For space limitations, right? The magazine can't print that whole thing. You know, an interview would have been, you know, 80 pages long, and that's all you would have read, pretty much in the book. You know, I would have cut it way down. You know, if I was rambling, blah 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 blah, I would have just written, you know, what kind of guitar are you playing on the new record, Edward? And that's what you're hearing. Now, however, you're hearing my entire question, unless my question was really inane, and I may have said to Adam, use your discretion. I mean, if I'm saying something dumb or Edward goes, I'm playing, you know, for 30 seconds, edit that stuff out, you know. But yeah, so you're hearing all of this extra stuff that isn't even in the book, which is why it turns out to be so many hours of audio. Yeah, and these little music bits, oh my God. So where I'm sitting there taking pages and pages trying to describe what Edward's doing, and me trying to learn how to he does that hammer on and get that triplet feel, you can now hear that, and it's I think it's amazing. It's like, you know, it's like you can read about it, and now you're hearing it. You know, it's like this sensory thing that's happening, you know, and through the wonder of technology and digital, you know, you're able to, you know, hear all this stuff. So, yeah, I think it's pretty remarkable, honestly.
It sounds like you guys are very excited. You guys are making us excited about this. My goodness, this is not just your average audio book. What were you going to say, Adam?
I was going to say I mean, some of the comments we've had so far, like what Steve was just saying, a lot of people that had heard part of it saying they're really getting that connection between Steve and Ed, hearing the voices, hearing them talking. I mean, yeah, it's great to read the book and everything, but hearing it, actually, the audio of it, you can really hear that connection, you know, what they had, how it comes across over the years. It's which I think it's a huge bonus, you know, to hear all this and to hear you guys actually talking what's in the book. So, yeah, that's great, I think. And sorry, the other thing I was going to say, like we were saying before, some of the audio from the original interviews are a little bit hard to hear. But the great thing is, you know, if people that don't have the book, I mean, it's all in the book anyway, but if people don't have the book, just the audio book, in the comments on Soundwise, you can actually write whatever you want. Say, hey, you know, what was this part? And then we can comment, Steve or myself or whoever can say exactly what was said. So, yeah, there's no guessing what did he say or whatever. It's all there.
Yeah. Let's excuse me. Let's this came out yesterday, so this is just one day old. Now let's direct everybody to how they can order this on audiobook. And if you already have a copy of Tonechaser, we have good news for you. But and thank you, Sandra. So to order the book, you need to download the Soundwise app or go to soundwise.com.
Excuse me, Tony. It's mysoundwise.com.
Mysoundwise.com, excuse me. And create an account. Search for Discover in the tab Tonechaser. Okay.
That's it.
And once you do this, they'll send you an email where you can go through the steps of actually purchasing the download. So very simple right there. These steps, instructions are in the description down below. So if you're not following along, you can easily go down there. But go to mysoundwise.com and you will find it. So, Steve, what's the price of the audiobook?
So you buy the audiobook as a standalone, it's $39.99. If you have already purchased the hardback, as a thank you to all those wonderful people who have, you know, supported me, as a thank you, you can get the audiobook for $29.99. And if you would like to get the audiobook and the hardback, you can get them both as a bundle for $79.99. And Adam, explain to them how they, if they've already purchased the hardback, how they can, how they get the audiobook for discount.
Yep. So anyone has already brought the book, it's got a copy, you know, prior to now. All you have to do is email Steve at scrosen. You can. What's your address again?
Right. So if you've purchased the hardback.
Yep. So yeah, there is.
Just email me at scrosen@sbcglobal.net. scrosen@sbcglobal.net.
Yeah. And so from there, it will reach out to you, and we'll send you a code, and then you'll be able to, when you go into Soundwise, it'll say apply code. So you put that code in, and you'll get your discount and get the book. Get the audio book for $29.99.
Yeah. And all you have to do when you email me, you can just take a picture of the book. You can send it to me. Just tell me what day you paid. Typically, I believe everybody who's contacted me said they have the book. I can't. If you want the audiobook that badly and you want to, you're willing to tell me you got the book when you didn't get the book, I'll probably believe you. But just take a picture of the book. Tell me what day you paid. I'll input a code. You go back. I'll input a code. I'll tell you the code. You can go back to the mysoundwise.com page, and you'll click on that code, and it'll automatically come up $29.99. And if you wanted to buy both of them, you buy the audiobook first.
Yep.
Adam?
That's correct. Yep.
Right. So go to mysoundwise.com, buy the audiobook. It's sort of a reverse process now. Contact me at scrosen@sbcglobal.net. Tell me that you just bought the audiobook, and you can buy the hardback for
$40.
$40. Thank you. Right. So you're now also getting a discount on the audiobook as well, on the hardback. Excuse me, guys. Yeah. So yeah.
So it's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. In fact, real quickly, I'm sorry, Tony. So originally, I had made kind of two videos. One is the video that you've all seen, me talking about the audiobook coming out and how excited we were. The second one was sort of going through the process of what you had to do with Soundwise. And then a very good friend of mine who helps me with my Instagram stuff, Chris Mello. Hello, Chris. Because the process came down to like 12 steps, and I had a step, and reading the steps was infinitely more difficult than what we've just described. And Chris said, "Hey, man, these people know how to do this stuff. I wouldn't know how to do it. I would have needed the 12 steps, but it's pretty simple." So thankfully, all you people out there are much smarter than I am on the computer. So it's a pretty simple process to order the audiobook.
Rock Daddy, what's up?
Yeah, actually, I find the best way. I mean, you can go to the website, but I know everyone's got smartphones these days, so iPhone or Android, you can just download straight from the App Store, Soundwise app. That's where you listen to the actual audiobook. So it'll be through this audiobook here, and you can actually do all steps straight from there. Download the app, search for Tonechaser. You'll get the email saying, "Hey, this is how to do it," and that's it. Easy.
Right on. What is the total listen time?
It's over 30 hours.
Okay.
30 hours and 30 minutes, right, Adam?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Pretty sure. Yeah. Long time.
Yeah, and just to give people a sort of comparison, typically audiobooks are about 10 hours long, 10, 12 hours long. So this is almost, 3 times as long as a normal audiobook. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Sounds like a good vacation.
It is. Take a week, listen to Tonechaser.
Yeah.
And so the other good thing is with Soundwise, if you want to go on an airplane or somewhere that doesn't have internet, you actually download the audiobook onto the Soundwise app, and you can listen to it without having to be on the internet as well, which is a really good. Same like any audiobook, same thing.
Nice. Right on.
Yeah.
And for those watching and you on replay too, these instructions are in the description of the show, so you can easily obtain this wonderful. This is exciting, Steve. This because we all knew how cool these read-throughs with these interview were already. So you guys are pros. This audiobook was inevitable, and to do it this way was inevitable, Adam.
Exactly.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Tony. And you know, and I've said it before, Tony. You were you would harangue me, and you would bother me, and you would pester me. Steve, you got to write a book, man. Steve, write the book on Van Halen. Tony, back off, buddy. Steve, you got to write the book. Steve, you got to write the book. I'm joking here, man. You really wanted me to write the book, you know. And honestly, man, you were a big part of me sitting down to write it. I thought, okay, maybe there's more people out there like Tony who really want this, you know. So that was the impetus to sit down and do that, you know. And yeah, you know, you say inevitable, Tony. Maybe it was, you know. Like I tell myself that I really never had a thought of doing an audiobook, and certainly not one like this. You know, when I first sat down to write the hardback, I mean, it was way too far in the future, way too much work, way too daunting. But inevitable, you know, was a little part of me that wanted to do it. I mean, I think there was, you know. You know, I just think people are going to hear it, man. I really think I think it's unbelievable. I mean, it's these rare conversations with this guy, you know, and who is gone. And those moments, obviously, those aren't coming back, you know. So, I don't know. To me, they were extraordinarily important and insightful. And I think they say as much about him as, you know, his music does. You know, you now get to hear him talking about his music and those moments in his life that were happening at that moment in his life. So he's talking about the band in real time, right? He's not looking back, and it's not an interview that was done 10 or 20 or 30 years later. And there's value in that. But this is in the moment, you know, so you have to remember that, man. That interview that you're hearing in 1980 was done in 1980. You know, the second tour, he had just gotten off the road, and, you know, he had just been married to Valerie, and he and Dave had just had a fight, or, you know, Wolfgang had just been born, or, you know, those are real-time moments, you know. And also for that reason, I think that's why, one, I was hesitant to write the book originally, because it's live, if you will. It's like, I didn't know if I wanted people knowing how we interacted in that moment live. You know, maybe people were going to be upset by something I said or didn't do, you know, and all those things go through my head. And now you go a step further and you reveal the conversations, you know, of those moments. And you know, I thought, my God, that's about as close as you can get, other than having been there with me, you know. So I thought about all those things, you know, and didn't want to present anything in an unflattering light, and you know, at the same time I wanted to be honest about it. So I thought about all those things as well, thinking about an audiobook of this time where I was using Edward's voice. But at the end of it, I really believe that there was real historic value here, you know, and I think people are going to hear it and they're just going to go, wow, Edward Van Halen, my God, you know, what an amazing character he was. So that's what I hope people come away with, you know.
Well, what I think I hope happens too, I hope this audiobook is widely popular, but the style of audiobook that this is something that others, you guys could be catalyst and see others, the audiobooks that have this stuff sprinkled in as well. And this is as good as audiobooks get, it sounds like, and you're making all of us excited. I know that.
Well, that's cool, Tony. Yeah, I mean, I never thought about that, but you think about, you know, how amazing would it be? I mean, if there's audio, if there were all those interviews of Paul Kossoff, You know, I mean, you know, if somebody had those kinds of, you know, a library of interviews with them, or Randy Rhoads, or Jimi Hendrix, my God, can you imagine? I mean, there's not that much stuff on him anywhere. But yeah, I mean, or the artists themselves, you know, maybe they have their own audiobooks in them, you know, their own conversations. I mean, I don't know, but you're right. I mean, it could be, it could be maybe the beginning of something. I mean, it'd be amazing to hear that stuff.
That is it's amazing to see how Tonechaser has evolved. You know, we've known each other a while, Steve, and back in 2020 doing weekly show me your pick episodes about guitar picks, and when you kind of dropped off and started writing, and you were writing X amount of hours a day every day, and we kind of around here we kind of knew you were writing the book, you know. But happy to see it come out, and for those I remember you talking a long time back in 2020 or even before then about a satchel of audio tapes, most of which unlabeled. And look, Steve and Adam, at how this has all come full circle here now. You know,
for sure.
So yeah,
especially like you're saying, those Twilight tapes that are in the book. You know, I really don't think anyone would have able to hear all of this if it wasn't for this audio book. You know, the Twilight tapes are amazing. I must say that when people hear that, they're going to freak out.
Yeah,
just about like with Wolfgang. You know, when Eddie's on the phone, she's like, "Steve, you got to check out my son. You know, listen to this." You hear him playing drums. You know.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing moment. And I'm glad you brought that up, Tony and Adam. Yeah, the Twilight tapes. And even after I thought, okay, I'm going to embed the audiobook with all the interviews, even then I thought about not including the what will become the Twilight tapes, because those are, anybody who's read the book knows what those interviews are and how personal that stuff was. And, you know, really thought about, my God, people are going to hear that. You know, what are they going to think? But to me, yes, Edward is revealed, of course, in all the interviews I did with him. And we understand him as a musician and all of those things. But the Twilight tapes, you know, when he talks about, you know, those more personal moments and his family, and a little bit that you mentioned, Adam, about Wolf. And I believe that's, I'm pretty positive that's the first time he ever spoke about Wolf, sort of, you know, in public. I mean, Wolf at the time was 11 years old. So, you know, I mean, if he had spoken about Wolf before then to somebody, again, my apologies, but I think that might have been the first time he ever talked about Wolf. But yeah, the Twilight tapes, I thought, you know, God, do I include that? But then I thought, you know, this has to be, it has to be all of it or none of it. So yeah, the Twilight tapes, I think, God, they just, oh man, I think they're going to resonate with people. They're going to just love hearing that stuff. And a lot of it is incredibly heartbreaking and it's sad. But that's who he was. And, you know, yeah.
Well, I think with those Twilight tapes, that's where you really hear your friendship too with Ed as a friend, not just a journalist interviewing for magazines. Those Twilight tapes really, you know, stand out your friendship as well.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, and again, that's why I almost didn't want to put those in there, because it's like, I mean, you look, I can understand why. I mean, very famous people sometimes feel so vulnerable. Look, and I'm not trying to compare myself to a famous person whatsoever, but you know, the fact that every single thing that they do, because of the internet, because of you know, iPhones and cameras, every single thing they do is visible to the entire world. And it's like, you know, they have nothing as their own. For me, in my small way, those interviews were really, you know, kind of real personal things, you know. And do I kind of want to put myself out there and make myself vulnerable to people who are going to listen to that and think negative thoughts or think something bad about it, or, you know. But I think people loved Edward so much that they understood the context of the conversations. And I think maybe one person on Reddit, and I don't know if any of you guys go to Reddit, but there are some nasty people on Reddit who cut down everybody. I mean, no matter who you're talking about. But some guy made a comment about, who's this Rosen? He doesn't know anybody. He lies, you know, or something, which is fine. But yeah, so talk about the Twilight tapes. Those tapes are incredible. You know, I mean, you were going to walk away from, you know, knowing Edward Van Halen infinitely better than you did before hearing the audiobook, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, for any Van Halen fan, you know, you'd pay $39.99 just to hear those chapters. You know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is a bargain, though. You know, it's no secret. This Van Halen community, people know your audio stuff on your YouTube already, Steve. That stuff is pure gold on there, and that's been up there a couple years or so now. But all of it, from when you first started to put audio up, we have just been enamored with all of this. I've still got clips here in my audio interview stuff of you and Eddie, Steve, that has been in here and will stay forever from 4 years ago, 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Tony. In a way, and I think when I put up those clips of Van Halen, of Ed, and you know, ultimately I put some stuff with Michael, and we, you know, the stuff I just put up with Alex, and Dave. In a way, my whole career has almost been laying the groundwork for the book. In other words, it's my provenance, my reputation as a journalist has been sort of created over all these decades, and me doing the stories, and not just with Edward, you know, the stories for Guitar Player and Guitar World and the various magazines. It as you suggested, Tony, I was a legitimate music journalist, you know, and then I put the stuff up on YouTube, and people hear that and they go, yeah, that's pretty cool, you know. So coming out with the book, people knew who I was. They knew that those were real interviews, that I did have this relationship with Edward Van Halen, you know. It wasn't as if I was just a writer who had maybe come out of the woodwork, who had known Edward Van Halen for all these years and was writing a book. And that would be legitimate. But the fact that sort of all those things came before, and then the audiobook comes out, I think maybe people sort of maybe knew what to expect. You know, if you read my articles back in the day, and you read those interviews with Edward and Jimmy Page and, you know, Richie Blackmore, you kind of knew who I was as a writer and that kind of thing. And the book comes out, and you know, you kind of knew what you were going to read, you know. And the audiobook, you know, you have a sense, I think, a little bit of what you're going to hear because you've heard that stuff up on YouTube. But even that is not going to prepare you for everything you're going to hear. I just think it's, I mean, very humbly, I think it's really amazing. I think people are just going to be floored by it, you know.
I think the other thing is too, Steve, like you're saying, a lot of people have heard those original interviews on YouTube, but now they're hearing interviews with your little inserts, you know, taking people where you are actually in the interview. You know, like you might have a little bit of the interview and Ed, then your narration talking about exactly what was happening at that time, that point. So it really puts people in that time frame of, you know, what's happening, rather than just hearing the interview the way it is. In the audiobook, it explains everything.
Right, that's very interesting. So, yeah, so exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, again, it's like this multi-dimensional thing. You can read that, but now you're hearing it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, me talking about, yeah, so Edward's coming over today, and I'm explaining about, yeah, now here's what the house looks like, and here's the guitar sitting in the racks. Yeah, and then you're hearing Edward playing those guitars. Yeah, it's like sensory. Yeah, it is. It is. I never thought about that. I mean, it really, it's like a 3D thing happening. You're reading and you're hearing, and it is, man. And it's pretty freaking original. It's unique. I mean, I think we created something really unique here, you know. And I think once the word, you know, thankfully for you, people like you, Tony, and the podcast, and I think once the word really gets out there, I think it's going to be, I believe it could be like a real trend-setting kind of a thing, you know. And just because Edward is such, obviously, I mean, his legend, you know, he's been gone, coming up on 4 years now. It's hard to believe. I mean, his legend now is probably bigger than it was, you know, in the waning years of when he was still here, you know. I mean, he's just one of those people. I believe you'll be talking about him in the next 50 years. He's just one of those people, you know, and for that reason, yeah, people want to hear and absorb and read everything there is to know about the guy. So pretty amazing for sure.
Let me ask you this, Steve. I seldom ask you these types of questions. When in real time, when you were as a 14-year-old kid in 1980, Van Halen were gods. Okay, I mean they when you were with these guys, yeah, the Van Halen guys, they're fun and they're this, and this, but in real time, were they as large in your eyes then as they were in mine then as a kid? What did you realize that they were just superstars? And maybe they quite weren't in 1980, but did you get a sense that, like, man, these guys are loved and this is going to be something? This is, you know.
That's a really good question, Tony. I know exactly what you're trying to say. What happens as a music journalist? So before I started writing, I mean, I played guitar. You know, I listened to a lot of music. I had a big record collection before I started writing. I was going to tons of concerts, and I write about that in the book. You know, I saw Deep Purple, and I saw The Who, and I saw Cream, and I saw Hendrix, Blind Faith. I mean, Jeff Beck. I saw these amazing shows, concerts, before I began writing. And what happens is you start writing, and those moments, standing in line, you know, going down to the Forum and standing in line and buying tickets for Cream or Hendrix, that experience of standing in line and getting that ticket was, it was just, I can remember doing that. Those moments, are going to the record store and finding a used copy of a Spirit album or a Jethro Tull record, or a Beatles record. I loved doing that. I mean, I was absorbed by it. And what happens, you know, you become this music journalist, and you're now sent tickets to concerts. You know, you don't have to buy your own tickets anymore. And you're sent the albums, and you're sent T-shirts, and you get to hang out with these bands. And I loved every moment of that. I would have paid the record labels and the management companies to go and sit there and talk with Peter Frampton and Paul Kossoff and Gary Moore. I mean, I would have done it for free, you know. But what happens is those moments don't mean quite as much. I mean, look, I would go and I was able to go backstage and see Yes, and it was amazing. But it never quite felt like standing in line for a ticket for Jimi Hendrix and going to the show and having a seat that maybe wasn't great and then sneaking down to the front. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're only a virgin once. You know, the first time you smoke pot and you get so wasted, but the next time it's not quite as good. In answer to your question, Tony, I realized that when I was with those guys that they were hugely popular. But it wasn't as if I was hanging out with a band I'd never hung out before. It's because I had been around them a little bit. I never had that sense of true awe that you did. Look, I wrote about in the book that not for 1 second did I ever forget that I was hanging out with Edward Van Halen, who was probably the greatest guitar player on the planet and probably the most popular. But I don't know if I ever had that true sense of awe every moment that you did, Tony, seeing them for the first time. I did have those moments when Edward would tell me that he had just won the guitar players poll as the best guitarist 5 years in a row. I'm thinking, my God, the guy, because that winning the poll one time, but winning it like 5 years in a row was like mind blowing. Or when he told me that they had like 3 diamond records, which is like selling 10 million records. At those moments, I realized, my God, he really is a legend. Look, I'm not trying to take away at all what it meant to me to hang out with him. But those feelings you had and all these people out there had, you don't quite get that because you're around it so much. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying I ever got blasé about it or hanging out with Zeppelin or The Who or Peter Frampton or Ted Nugent or any of these people that I was so lucky to meet. But it just, I never quite had that feeling of going to a concert that I had buying the tickets myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It becomes like this reverse thing. Now, again, I wouldn't have changed my life as a music journalist for anything. I was so lucky to have been there. But some of those moments were a little less for me for that reason. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to explain. I was blessed. I was lucky to have had those experiences. And there were certainly moments when I felt every bit of what you felt, Tony. Maybe it's because I was around Edward a fair amount before that first record came out and before the first tour. I mean, I kind of knew him for 8 or 9 months. And I'm not saying in the course of 8 or 9 months, it was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go see Van Halen now, and they're going to send tickets to me from Warner Brothers. It wasn't like that at all. But I just don't think that experience was what all of these other people out here in the chat room felt, or maybe the people who bought the book. I think if you talk to, and I've asked the question of Joe Perry, well, Joe, what's it like, going out there and playing that same set for all these years, man? Does it still resonate with you? And all these guitar players will still tell you, yes, man, I still get excited by going out there. But I would bet you anything, deep down, it doesn't feel like that first tour that Aerosmith did. It's impossible for it to feel like that. You know what I mean? And that's why I liken it to having like that first kiss from the girlfriend. I mean, it's like nothing feels like that, Does the 20th kiss feel amazing? It does, man. But you remember that first kiss, You remember the first concert, you remember the first time you saw Van Halen or going to see Aerosmith for the first time, So yeah, man, it's kind of a long explanation. A lot of those moments are etched in my mind. And at moments, it did hit me. My God, these guys are legends. I can't believe I'm hanging out with a guy. That hit me a lot. I was aware of that a lot, you know. Yeah, it's just a different reality that hits you, you know. Writing the book brought all those moments back, you know, and doing the audiobook even brings them back again. There was never a time when I was complacent. Oh, I'm just going to go hang out with Edward Van Halen. That never happened. But, you know, maybe seeing them in concert because I'd seen them a fair amount of times, maybe it didn't quite mean what it would have meant to somebody else who'd only seen them once or twice. So I hope I answered that, you know, correctly. I'm not going to say, oh, fucking Rosen, yeah, he thinks he's so. It wasn't like that at all. Trust me. And I write about it in the book over and over. I had to tell myself, this is Edward Van Halen. This is Edward Van Halen. Don't geek out. Don't be a nerd. Don't, you know, fall over yourself. You know, be a professional. You know, I never lost that at all. So
well, I can only imagine that in your career, Steve, that you've interviewed people of music that you like, people that music that you don't like. I'm sure. Nice people that weren't so nice. We've heard those stories too. But how much of your career did you spend covering bands that you didn't like their music?
That's a good question.
Even if it were at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent point, because after the fact, I learned to like a lot of those bands, much more. I interviewed Genesis in '74. Peter Gabriel's still in the band. I'm in the room with Phil Collins, Mike Rutherford. Peter Gabriel may have been in the room. I was so not a Genesis fan. I remember seeing Peter Gabriel, you know, and he'd put on like that weird, like flower thing, and his face would be weird. And it's like, I could not stand those Genesis records. And I remember I had to almost be forced at gunpoint to interview Genesis. I walked into that room. I don't even think I knew the name of one of their songs. And I asked these stupid questions of like, well, don't you think Peter, if he didn't do that crazy stuff, you guys would be more popular? How could I ask such a stupid question? And now I wish, oh my God, you're sitting in a room, and I know it's Phil Collins, Mike Rutherford, and I think it was Tony Banks, the keyboard player.
Yeah.
I know it was those three. Peter Gabriel may have been in the room. I'm thinking, oh my God, let me go back in time and do that interview over. Now I think, oh my God, yeah, I didn't care for them. I remember interviewing Steely Dan. I think the second record was out. I never liked Steely Dan. And, you know, I was only there because the publicist who worked with Steely Dan, a company called Gibson Stromberg, Lydia Woldhag, who I write about in the book, who would later introduce me to Guitar Player magazine and get me their Jeff Beck interview. The only reason I did the Steely Dan interview was because they handled Jeff Beck, and I wanted to ultimately do a Jeff Beck interview. So I said, sure, I'll interview Steely Dan. I don't even think I knew any songs they did. I mean, I probably did, Reeling in the Years or some of the hits or something. But that happened a fair amount. I would do an interview with a band because the publicist or that label had other bands I wanted to interview. But I mean, it didn't happen very often. I mean, I would say 5% maybe, not very often. But I still enjoy talking to those people, because to a fault, every single one of those musicians I spoke to, they so believed and loved what they were doing that they made me believers. I may not have cared for their music, but that was their life, and I understood that. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm just kind of doing this until something else comes along, you know. But that's a good question. But yeah, there were those moments. I would interview guys, bands I didn't care for, and they also turned out to be assholes. I remember doing an interview with Doc Watson. He was that blind. It was kind of like that folk bluesy. I mean, he's an amazing artist, but I mean, that stuff I just didn't get it. You know, just I didn't get that kind of music, you know. And he was not very nice. I mean, I'm sorry, Doc, and I think he's gone now for many years, but he wasn't very nice. You know, some other guys who weren't very nice, and on top of that, I didn't like their music. So
Yeah,
it didn't happen very often.
So I never really knew why Peter Gabriel left Genesis, but I guess now we know.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, you ran him out of town, man. Right
exactly.
On.
Exactly. If
They
the
went
writers
on to
don't
great
even like,
success.
exactly. If the writers don't even like what I do, let me go find something else, you know.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, real quick. On the other side of that, I was offered interviews with Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt, when her career first started, she could not give records away, right? I mean, she was just another artist. I turned them down. They would ask every year, you want to interview Bonnie? You want to interview Bonnie? And now I think, oh my God, you moron, you could have interviewed Bonnie Raitt. The Grateful Dead was another band. I was never a Grateful Dead fan. They offered them every year. And I think, oh my God, I could have interviewed Grateful Dead.
So,
Who knew?
I know. I know. Steve, the audiobook is out. It's been out a day now. And for those of you who already have Tonechaser, the instructions on how to get audiobook are down below in the description, and you will see it. You can get a discount too. You'll see that as well. Steve, we are so excited about this audiobook, and you and Adam have done nothing here but make our mouths water. You know,
That's good.
Cool, man.
We're
Cool.
chomping at the
I hope
bit.
so.
Chomping at the bit. We are.
Very cool. Well, Adam worked like a maniac, and I'd call him, and I'd be frantic, and he was always calm, and he was a professional, you know, and he said he couldn't find a piece, and I'd go crazy, and I'd find it, and, you know, I thought, my God, we're never going to get through with this, but without Adam Roach, there is no book. Without Tanner Poppet, there is no book, and so I'm forever grateful to those guys.
Right on, Adam.
So,
Thank you.
Adam, I'm sure that you have to be so proud of this audio book, sir.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, just after hearing it out there, and you know, people, especially the people commenting on it, like I think Monique was saying before, you know, already it's got 5 stars on Soundwise. You know, a lot of people just a lot of good things to say about it, and you know, knowing that I've been part of it as well, it's been a huge you know, thing for me as well. So, and thank you, Steve, for trusting me to do this for you.
Yes, and we all know that audiobooks are not always narrated by the author. No. And but this is unique with Steve doing this, plus audio interview inserts along the way. This is going to prove to be a gem, as well as our hard copies, Steve, of Tonechaser. It does sound, you guys did it right. It sounds like a home run to me. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I must say the people that do have the book, you know, either one or the third one, whichever one, I believe it really is a good companion to the book as well. So if you are reading it, have the audio in the background. It's a great read and to follow along too. So yeah.
Yeah. So those of, and I'll say us, not you, but those of us not really everyday audiobook consumers, we as Van Halen fans and lovers of this Tonechaser book already are all going to give this audiobook a personal go. Aren't we? All of us are. You know, I know that not all of us do audiobooks. A lot of us are big readers, but like the book and all that. Not gonna, but Steve, I assure you that all of us are gonna go and get this and enjoy this, and it might turn us all into audiobook lovers. You know, some of us already are, but yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah, no, you definitely
Sounds
definitely
cool.
like it. Yeah, for sure.
Right
Very
on.
cool.
All right, everybody, that information is down below. You'll find the instructions to order in the description of the show. All right. So I guess at this point, as excited as we are, and in our brother Ed's absence tonight, Ed, we're thinking about you, dude. Everybody in the chat send some good vibes Ed's way. Yeah. Ed,
Yeah.
feel better, bro. All right. So we're gonna bypass trivia tonight, and I'll wait on Ed. So Ed, that's for you, brother. We'll wait on you. And got a good question. We'll keep it on ice for him until next week. But this has been fun beyond belief hanging out with you guys. Adam, always great to see you, sir.
Thank you.
We need you back here soon. We'll find an excuse to drag you back. As always, Steve, always a pleasure to see you, sir. Excited about the launch of the audiobook, as all of us are. Glad to see you're doing well, and always great to see you, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Sonny. Appreciate it. Always appreciate your support. I want to say one last thing here. For those who don't know, Adam Roach is a very good guitar player. So go check out his guitar playing, and
Yes, thank you.
you will not be disappointed. So
Yeah.
So become a guitarist today.
become a
YouTube.
guitarist today. Adam
Check
teaches
it
guitar. I'm waiting for him to teach me how to play a freaking solo decently, but now that he's not working on my book, maybe he'll have some time. So
That's
It's
right.
right.
You'll find that link if you scroll down. Those of you, you'll find Adam's YouTube link down in this
Excellent.
description here. It stays there. So at
Very cool.
Adam's at home here on the channel, you'll find his stuff there.
Good.
Always good stuff. Yeah. Steve, stay in touch, my friend.
Yep.
We will catch up soon, everybody. Your Tonechaser audiobook is available to you now, and Adam and Steve had put together quite a handsome audiobook. You're not going to believe it. You're familiar with all the other read-throughs and audio stuff that they've done and Steve has done. And yeah, I think it's going to be fabulous, Steve. I'm excited. I think everybody watching tonight and those that watched YouTube earlier with you on over at Johnny, they're excited also. The way this audio book is made in the fashion of the read throughs, what you guys have already been doing. Home run. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for everybody out there in the chat. I really appreciate you guys coming by.
Yeah. Everybody have a great night. Leave a thumbs up on your way out. We'll see you right back here next Tuesday. We'll talk all things Van Halen as we always do. But Saturday on your 4th of July holiday weekend, have a very safe 4th. Keep all your fingers. You'll need them. You know what I mean by that. But Saturday night, if you are in town and not traveling and you are up late, you can hang out with us on Show Me Your Pick right there. We're talking John Mellencamp, Saturday night, July 6th, 9 p.m. Brendan B. Squared, back from vacation, very long vacation up at Lake George. He's back. We'll see you guys Saturday for Show Me Your Pick, episode 206, Steve.
Nice.
That's a lot of weeks since me and you started it in 2020 with Aerosmith.
Indeed.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Everyone, have a good night. See ya.
Hey guys.
Peace.
Peace.